Welcome to the Thriving Misfits, the podcast where we celebrate resilience, embrace diversity, and challenge norms. I'm your host, Fyiona Yong, and in this episode, we are thrilled to welcome Marga, a seasoned employer brand and recruitment marketing professional who has worked in the oil and gas industry and now leads the talent attraction team at Ciena, a global leader in optical and routing systems, services, and automation software. Marga sees herself as a connector between great talents and great careers, using her expertise to uncover Ciena's people stories through personalized marketing campaigns. But beyond her role, Marga is a passionate advocate for inclusion, particularly around neurodiversity. Having been diagnosed with ADHD, anxiety, and depression, she openly champions holistic mental well-being and aims to break the stigma surrounding mental health through awareness and advocacy. As a first-time mom and manager, Marga is learning to navigate the challenges of balancing work and family life and is just dedicated to supporting others by sharing her experiences. So join us as we dive into Marga's journey, her insights on neurodiversity and mental health, and how she's helping to build inclusive environments at work and beyond. So welcome, Marga.
Hi, thanks, Fiona. Happy to be here.
That's great that you are on this episode, and we actually not really consciously got to know each other when we're both at oil and gas. We both worked at Shell, but we both have a very mutual role model who is also on my podcast before, Lynn.
Yes, Lynn. Yeah, I worked with her on a project before. I actually stumbled upon your podcast and you when she posted it on her LinkedIn account, and I was like, oh my god, this is a great platform, and I wanted to be able to share my experience too. But Lindley is like a great advocate, right? And she's a great influence, so it really resonated, and I wanted to do something too.
Awesome. And we had a previous conversation before, Marga and I, and she had so many insightful things to share that I thought she would be an absolute great guest for our season 2. So let's kick it off with some rapid fire questions so that the listeners can get to know you a little bit better. So if you could create a personalized marketing campaign for neurodiversity awareness, but it had to feature a superhero version of yourself, what would your tagline be?
Oof, I'm gonna double down on my ADHD and say focus flare. Focus flare would be who I would be a superhero, but my tagline would be clarity in chaos, power in precision.
I see that you are probably a Marvel fan. Are you Marvel?
Super, yeah. I am DC actually, but this was I kind of gave me a lot of thought around it. I'm just like it's the ADHD, I guess, and I wanted to double down on it. Yeah.
Now, you and I were both first-time moms, and so not only are you a first-time mom, you're also a manager. So what do you think? Which is harder, managing a team meeting or getting your baby to nap time?
That's a tough question. Surprisingly, I would say it would be managing a team meeting.
Yes, absolutely. I can resonate with that. The anxieties that I had, especially when he was younger than 1 year old, and you wanted to make sure that they grow and, grow healthily, that they're just like having a good well-being kind of thing going on, and you always worry about whether or not they're having enough nap times and making sure that you stick to the nap times, even if you have to go out, right?
Yeah, I think as long as it's mostly instinctive, I think, but also a routine really helps. But yeah.
All right. Now, let's have a look at your childhood. Now, if we look back at your childhood, were there any, early experiences that made you aware of being different or feeling misunderstood, which later fueled your passion for advocating neurodiversity in the workplace?
Oh, wow. I feel like it's going to uncover a lot of things, right? But I remember being very distracted as a child. People would always tell me that they would see me daydreaming or just drawing on everything. I would draw on my books, my test papers. I was actually told by one of my teachers that and I quote, would never amount to anything because I couldn't get my head right. As a child, right? I was in elementary. But then thinking back, I just didn't thrive on these traditional learning methods or having to sit still in a classroom for like 8 hours a day, right? And when it came to my peers, I think, my mind races very fast, and I tend to interrupt people while they're talking, trying to finish what they're about to say because it felt so slow to me. But I would also ask so many questions because I needed to know the details. I wanted to know why, where, how, what. And this annoyed people a lot. And, I feel some of my peers moving away. They don't want to kind of talk to me, or they're like, that's just too much with this girl. So it felt isolating. And, these moments being taught by, someone you look up to, like a teacher, or being told by your peers that they don't want to talk to you because you talk too much or different. Initially, it started out as loneliness. And then as I grew older, I channeled it into empathy, where I wanted to dedicate my life, my career, my passion into ensuring that others don't have to face what I faced as a child growing up. And even if it just starts with me and I treat people a little bit like kinder and just make people feel accepted, I'd like to think of it as a ripple effect. And that really shaped how I interact with people. And it really, until to this day, fuels my passion for, understanding and awareness for people.
Wow. I think you and I were complete opposites as children. I was extremely shy. I was bullied a lot, and I always thought, and I always looked up to those who are extremely vocal and extroverted. But it's insightful to hear from you that also for those who are extroverted, who have a lot to share, also feel lonely.
Yeah, because it's either or. Like, it's a group of either introverted or extroverted, but it's a matter of how people kind of react to that, right? We need to be accepting, and for us to be accepting, we need to understand.
Yeah, and I've just recently read a research paper, especially for women or girls, they are being diagnosed much later with regards to ADHD, ASD. How was it for you? How did the diagnosis come about? When did it happen? And how was it for you after receiving the diagnosis?
Yeah, I wanted to double down first on like the women or ladies getting diagnosed later. I do understand because the benchmark or the studies actually revolved around male and boys, and it really timed in with the hyperactivity. So a girl or anyone could actually have ADD or ADHD without the hyperness. So it was really challenging. I actually never got diagnosed or didn't get diagnosed until I started working at Ciena, where I felt the challenges of working. I couldn't focus. It felt very difficult to get any stuff done. And then it was at a peak moment of my anxiety and depression because our house got flooded and all of that happened. And it really took my manager telling me, hey, we have an employee assistance program. Why don't you talk to someone? Check that out. And I was like, okay. And then, talked to a couple of people. And then eventually I got diagnosed with ADHD, anxiety, and depression. And I am under medication, and it's proven like a life changer. Like, I can imagine the stigma of people saying, oh, that's drugs, that's bad. Try to meditate first and all of that. And I agree. I mean, but the gist is it's different for everyone. And this allows me to function as best as I can without, feeling like I couldn't do anything, and then I would spiral again into like my anxieties and depression. So it's very complex and complicated. And when I talk about medication, it's very individualistic. It's very unique for each person. So I am trying to work with my therapist to see, hey, can we wean off the medication? Especially, when I was breastfeeding, what are the alternatives that I can do around meditation and all of that stuff. So it really warranted an open conversation and being aware that, hey, this might not be working for me anymore. Something happened in my life. I need to pivot. So it's just it's a journey. It's up and down. It's left and right. It could be anything, in a moment's notice, really.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that and for being so open to sharing. Now, were there any role models or mentors in your childhood or maybe in your teenage years who really helped you to embrace your neurodiverse traits?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think, growing up in the Philippines, we don't really have great support when it comes to mental health. There's still a stigma around it even now. So I actually again started having more support and awareness when I started working. But I do remember in high school, we had this physics class. Our teacher, Miss Fadlan, she was the only one in my entire education, in my entire like early years, she was the only one who made me feel like normal or even accepted that I thought a little bit differently, only with her did I thrive. Like I scored perfect quizzes, exams, only because she taught, number one, she taught in a very engaging manner that was very me. It was creative, it was fun, it was not the, droning classroom lectures. And then second is I remember she would grade, when she would grade my exam papers, and I would write a solution a little bit differently, but I would get to the right answer. She would accept it. And it was very motivating because I did experience getting wrong marks or zero because the solution or the way I got to the answer wasn't right or wasn't what they expected to be. So it was that was the only thing that I hung on to keep me strong, to keep me motivated. But yeah, I owe a lot of the confidence to her too.
Yeah. Now, you're a first time mom. I'm also quite interested to see during pregnancy or maybe even postpartum, how did the ADHD or even your anxiety and depression show up? Did you see that it has gotten worse due to pregnancy or postpartum? Or, yeah, what was your experience?
Yeah, so number one, I had to go off meds. The moment I found out I was pregnant, I had to go off all my meds. But my therapist was very clear, and he said that actually symptoms, ADHD symptoms at least, they would lessen during pregnancy. I think I'm very lucky to be working in a company that just kind of allowed me to have some leeway up to my delivery date. I had long leaves, I had very supportive teams. The postpartum, I think, was the worst part. It really felt really dark, and a lot of self-hatred of if my baby would cry, I would feel the guilt, a multitude of like 10 like my husband, thankfully was very understanding. He didn't understand, but he really tried his best to support me. Postpartum depression, I think, lasted a couple of months. It started a couple of months later, maybe around my third month, but it was about 3 to 4 months, really dark. And then now it just comes and goes in waves now that my son is a year old. But it was really dark. And the most important thing is I had a really good support system. I think that really helped a lot. Sometimes I wouldn't even notice it. And my husband would tell me, "Hey, are you okay? I kind of feel like you're kind of off." And then I would reflect and I said, "Oh yeah, I didn't even realize I was slumping." I wouldn't get out of bed, or the only thing that would have kept me moving was my son. And it was just like I was allowed to be in a space where as long as my son is taken care of, I'm fine. So a lot of the care was for me. And it's true. If you take care of the mom, the baby is taken care of. So, yeah.
Yeah. Like I grew up in Germany and still have a lot of friends from the Western Hemisphere. But then I've also lived in Asia now for almost 15 years. And this concept of confinement, right, after you deliver a baby, where you have either a doula or someone who comes home to you who is going to be focused on taking care of you instead of just the baby so that you can rest. Or maybe even your mom, like my mom was able to stay with me for the first 4 weeks. That was so, so helpful. And I think this is also something that I would say everyone should embrace, that confinement period, because it's so, so critical.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, we're pressured by society, I think, to get out of that pregnancy. Oh, I'm ready to bounce back. I'm ready. It takes years for a new mom to get back to herself, even physically, mentally, and emotionally, right? So yeah, I totally agree. Like we need to talk about it more. That it's difficult. It's wonderful, yes, but it's really challenging, right? So the confinement is absolutely spot on. Give the mom some space to rest. And I really want to call this out. This is more of, if you talk to someone who's a new mom, the common thing here, at least in the Philippines, is they want to help you by taking care of the baby. But it's actually the other way around, right? The mom needs to spend time with the baby. So help bring food, help
Yes.
with laundry and all of that stuff. So I think the help has to be guided too. But, all well-meaning as well. But I think it's harder for the mom to, especially in a culture like ours, it's hard to speak up. It's hard to say, hey, can you just help me with food? I want to spend time with my baby. So it's just balancing that too. And the pressures really of society. That's why I think we really need to talk about it more.
Absolutely. Now, when we talk about neurodiversity in the workplace, typically we focus on ADHD, depression, dyslexia. But actually, as a postpartum mom, we also have not only the baby blues or the postpartum depression, but also the foggy brain, right? It's all based on research. It's really happening. That's why I feel, talking about neurodiversity in the workplace, it needs to be much more, people need to be much more aware of that, because it can actually hit or it can impact anyone, right? It's not just the person who is diagnosed with ASD, with ADHD. It can actually happen. And I also talked to Lynn about that. In fact, neurodivergence can be acquired throughout different stages in our lives, because, for example, dementia, Alzheimer's, right? All of that is actually included as well, but we don't really see that visibly. And I think in the space of DEI, we looked into gender, LGBTQ plus, culture, which is great, and there's so much more work that we need to do in that space. But I think, especially when it comes to neurodivergence, it's not immediately visible to the human eye unless we disclose it, right? Like, if you reach out to me, I wouldn't even know that Marga actually had neurodivergent. So, because now let's talk a little bit more around your workplace journey. So you are leading talent attraction at Ciena. How do you incorporate your passion for DEI, especially when we're talking about neurodiversity, also in your recruitment strategies and campaigns?
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm going to answer it in maybe two parts. Look, primarily DEI, from a DEI standpoint, what we really do is we ensure that we create more opportunities for people to be represented in our campaigns. I'm really trying to move away from stock photos or that very corporate photo of someone in a wheelchair. It's just so much more than that, right? And like some of our peers, we try to use gender neutral language in our job advertising. We try to represent people as much as we can in the most authentic way possible, because the goal really is to just encourage more relevant, more talented people, qualified people to apply, because our jobs and our company is more accessible to them. And then from a neurodiversity standpoint, honestly, it's just very in the early ages. I think it's really what we're doing right now is very internal focused, because you want to cultivate that before you even market it. The last thing I want is to be advertising for a company, like, let's say it's not there yet, and then the experience is very different from what they were told to what they come into, and that's just a loss for everyone, right? And eventually I would love to launch a powerful campaign, but neurodiversity is just quite complex, and you can't really just rush that. You need to just organically do that. And where we're starting is really in the application and interview stages, where I feel it matters a lot. Recruiting teams would talk to a person because they've already shortlisted the resume, the quality is there, the skills are there. But a lot of people lose out on the interview stage because not everyone can express themselves as well as what we expect it to be. So I'm working with our DEI teams to just kind of identify the types of accommodations that we can do beyond sight or other, physical disabilities. It's more of, do you get anxious when you're talking to a lot of people? Can we do one-on-one interviews instead of panels? Or can we add a little bit more time so this person can breathe a little or give some time to think more? And a lot of that pressure comes from the environment we put them in. And we're trying to really provide these accommodations to everyone available. Personally, I would love more time for my interview because I would talk a lot. And I would circle. I think a lot of that is understanding too. So I would talk a lot, and sometimes the point gets lost in the clouds and the kerfuffle. So it's really important that we also try to upskill and provide awareness into our internal teams who are part of the process, right? So right now we do neurodiversity awareness initiatives internally to kind of showcase what's out there, what's in here, what can we do, and it's just really making people feel comfortable enough to join, and we get the best hire out of that, right? We lose a lot out on candidates on the interview stage, and that's where we're prioritizing.
Fantastic. Now, as a DI advocate, whether I was still in Shell or even now as an individual supporting clients, I I haven't heard it directly into my face, but sometimes they see us as like the woke police, right? So what are some of the challenges that you've actually encountered in promoting neurodiversity at work?
My God, I could count a lot of scenarios, but I think in general, I've actually been in conversations, not just in my current employer, but I think throughout my entire career, where people say or just see it as, oh, it's another thing that we have to keep track of, and it's something that will happen. Like, we need strong people. We don't need, all of these sensitive stuff. And I'm like, it's just so stressful to be in a position where, wow, you're literally talking to someone who openly told you that they're neurodiverse and this is how you talk to them. Like, it's just really not clicking of, okay, hi, I'm here, please just give a little bit of respect. But when I do get the opportunity, I try to relate it in ways that they would understand. And I'm not sure if this is the best example, but for example, math. Math is one of the most logical and straightforward subjects that people go through in school, right? And if we want to end up with the number, let's say 10, there are a myriad of ways to get there. A plus B, A times B, A plus B plus C, and all of that, right? And the end goal or the answer is the same. It's 10. And how people will get there will be different, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong. And it may be, and to the math fans out there, I may be oversimplifying it, but the gist is, it doesn't mean that it's wrong if it's done a different way. And I think in addition to supporting our DEI teams, it's really knowing who to talk to that can make change, that can drive that change, right? So the DEI team that I work with really help me uncover these stories. We share inputs. We try to be respectful because not everyone wants to talk about their neurodiversity or their concerns. So we really try to balance the, hey, do you want to come talk to us, versus, what I see as standard practices. Oh, let's take a photo. You're a person of color. Like, we want to put you on our website. Like, we're really trying to be cognizant of that and trying to avoid that. And, a lot of people, thankfully, I'm in a place where people who don't know, they're like, what does that mean? What can I do? Like, the most important part is they start to know, and then they ask questions. Because when they ask questions, it means they want to understand. And when they understand, it means they get to support. So we have a long way to go, and it's been, a long journey. But personally, again, with the ripple effect, I really try to at least encourage my team, the people I could influence, to create a culture or an environment where people feel safe. A perfect example would be, I would set meetings, but I would put the agenda, because blank calendar invites give some people some anxieties, right? I try to, when it's time for constructive feedback, I say, hey, are you in the right space to receive some constructive feedback? And when they say no, okay, let's put something in the calendar. I have to run through some things with you. And, it's a small step, but I feel that it's rippling, because my teammates do that for their peers and their stakeholders. And you can really see that it's been successful. Like, my team comes to work in their best self, their most authentic self. They know that they can be vulnerable with me, and it's really opened up a better relationship with my team. And I think, it also drives into performance. High performing teams really come from happy people. And happy people are happy because they feel that they can be themselves and think creatively and think outside the box and not be afraid of any negative, perception, or, to just be told no because it's different. So, it's a long-winded answer to the question, but the overcoming factors, I really try to channel and bring that energy out. I try to explain. I try not to be pish-poshy about it. Like, oh, you don't know this? This is the new thing. Like, that's going to turn them away. It's really more of, hey, can I talk to you about this? And then if they're willing, then you do it. And if they're not, then you give them space and then try again. but it's really just trying to represent and showcase that outward.
Wonderful. Now, for those of the listeners who are feeling that they're neurodivergent, maybe they have not been officially diagnosed yet, but they have that inkling that probably they are. What are some of your recommendations for neurodivergent individuals to really thrive in their careers, to build that confidence and also resilience?
Yeah, I think number one is really self-awareness. You don't know what you don't know. And number two is really speaking up. If you don't speak up yourself, who will, right? But I do acknowledge that some people are in challenging environments and speaking up is not enough. So what you can do is, find an advocate, find a leader who can help steer you in the right direction, find your network. You start small and then you build your community. It has to come from you too. At the same time, if you have challenges with your mental health or, in your neurodiversity and stuff, you talk to your manager. And if you can't talk to your manager, talk to a company mentor or a career advisor to create like a personalized career development path for you. Or you tell them what works for you. Like for me, a perfect example would be my ADHD brings me to multiple rabbit holes. Like I would get assigned a task. I would end up doing 20 things that doesn't really end up with the result that we want. And I told my manager, hey, I need a little bit more help because I really can't, pivot or position myself in the best way. And he's like, okay, tell me what you have planned. I'm like, okay, I want to do this. And he's like, stop. That's like a lot. Just do A, B, and C. And then that helps me because I need help in that front. And I talk to my manager and they help me, right? Next is speak to a therapist. I'm going to get a lot of eye rolls. I'm going to get a lot of, ugh. But like, it's not just, talking to a therapist isn't about addressing problems. It doesn't mean you're sick. It doesn't mean you have problems. It actually means that it's a space for self-reflection, self-awareness, who you are outside of the roles that you play in life. Who are you outside of your spouse, your partner, your work, your kids? Who are you? And that's talking to a therapist and covers that. It's all about finding a safe space to talk about your thoughts where you won't be judged. And it's actually proactive mental health care. You talk to someone before you even get burned out, right? You don't want to get burned out and start talking to someone. It's the way you exercise your muscles is also how you should exercise and, keep yourself healthy mentally. And then the last is really, finding a community that would help you. But the last is your stay in tune with your sense of self. I think your awareness, that you're capable, that you're strong. You'll be met with a lot of challenges, a lot of conflict, a lot of questions, but your guiding light to help you get to where you want to be and to be successful is really in how you trust and how you believe in yourself. That being different isn't, a defeating factor. It's actually a super strength, like my focus flare. I could get stuff done very quickly when I'm in the zone. I use that to my advantage, right? I think outside the box, and it's proven a lot of, I'm actually a problem solver in our company. So like you have to find how to use your neurodiversion or your neurodiversity as a strength. But yeah, and then this also includes self-care. Take care of yourself, find a safe space, eat well, sleep well, work out, all that stuff.
Absolutely. It has to be that holistic approach. Thank you so much, Marga. And also thank you to everyone joining us today's episode with Marga, where we explored her journey from recruitment marketing to advocating for neurodiversity and mental health. The personal experience with ADHD, anxiety, and depression have shaped not only her approach to leadership, but also her passion for driving DEI in the workplace. We hope Marga's stories and insights have inspired you to embrace your unique traits, trust your instincts, and create more inclusive environments in your own work and life. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Leave a review and share it with someone who might benefit from these powerful takeaways. So until the next time, remember, being different is a strength, and every one of us can help create a more inclusive world. So keep thriving, Misfits.
Thank you.